My family's annual holiday had always been joyful, until that fateful trip when my sister vanished. Before her disappearance, she had a heated argument with my dad, leaving us all unsettled. The years passed, and hope faded. But then, 8 years later, my dad dropped a bombshell. His confession left us reeling, demanding answers no one was prepared for. The story begins with the family packing for their annual holiday trip, filled with anticipation and excitement. Boxes of beach toys, suitcases spilling over with clothes, and an assortment of snacks filled the hallway. "Make sure you have everything, Alara," Mom called out. Alara rolled her eyes but smiled, throwing another bikini into her suitcase. Everything seemed perfect, like always, but none of us knew what lay ahead. Tensions arise as Bram, their father, gets into a heated argument with Alara over her choices in life, hinting at deep-seated issues. "You're wasting your potential, Alara," Bram yelled, his face red. "I'm living my life, Dad. Just leave me alone," she shot back, tears brimming in her eyes. We could all feel the room's temperature rise. No one dared intervene as they continued to clash. The argument escalates, shocking everyone present. "I won't let you ruin your life," Bram shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Alara bolted upright. "You can't control me forever," she screamed, voice trembling with fury. The noise echoed through the house, startling even the dog. Mom tried to mediate, but the damage was done. The tension was like a dark cloud hanging over us, impossible to ignore. That evening, Alara storms off, saying she needs some space. "I can't stay here," she muttered, grabbing her coat. "Where are you going?" I asked, concern lining my voice. "Just out for a walk. I need to clear my head," she replied curtly, not meeting my eyes. She slammed the door behind her, leaving us all in a suffocating silence. Worry gnawed at the edges of my mind. The family is uneasy as they retire for the night, still grappling with the tension. The next morning, Alara is nowhere to be found, and the search begins. "Is she back yet?" Mom asked as we gathered for breakfast. "No," Dad said, his face pale. Panic crept in. We scoured the house, called her friends, and drove around the neighborhood. With every passing minute, the dread deepened. Days turned into weeks with no sign of Alara. Missing posters plastered the town, each one a gut-wrenching reminder of our loss. "Have you heard anything?" Mom would ask the police daily, her hope dwindling. We held on to any sliver of possibility, but every lead felt like a dead end. The house felt emptier without her laughter, her presence a void that couldn't be filled. The local police are involved, but the case quickly goes cold. "We're doing everything we can," the officer said, but his eyes told a different story. Search parties dwindled, and the chatter about her disappearance faded. "We can't give up," Dad insisted, though even his resolve seemed to waver. The community moved on, but our family remained trapped in a loop of despair and questions. The lack of any leads or clues puts a strain on the family, especially Bram, who becomes increasingly withdrawn. "It's like he's not even here," Mom whispered one night. He'd lock himself in his study, staring at old photos and maps. His eyes were always distant, lost in some memory. The house felt colder, and the light in Dad's eyes dimmed, casting a shadow over everything. Suspicion and guilt linger among the family members, each wondering if they could have done something differently. Should I have stopped her that night? I'd ask myself often. Mom blamed herself for not mediating the argument better. We all had our demons, whispering in the quiet moments. Bram's behavior grew erratic, filled with sleepless nights and obsessively combing through any potential leads. Our once joyful holidays became times of mourning. Bram's behavior becomes erratic, filled with sleepless nights and obsessively combing through any potential leads. His eyes, once lively and full of laughter, now held a permanent shadow of worry. "Have you found anything yet, Dad?" I'd sometimes ask, though I knew the answer. "Not yet," he'd mumble, flipping through another stack of papers. His obsession grew, making everyone around him uneasy. The once joyful holidays are now times of mourning and dread. "Remember how we used to decorate the tree?" Mom would say, her voice thick with unshed tears. The laughter, songs, and family traditions faded into hollow memories. Instead of joy, the holidays brought a painful reminder of Alara's absence. What should have been moments of shared happiness felt like an endless loop of sorrow. 8 years pass, and the family dynamics continue to be influenced by Alara's disappearance. Birthdays, anniversaries, and family gatherings all carried an undercurrent of sadness. Each passing year only deepened the void she left behind. Everyone tried to move on, but the shadow of the mystery lingered. "It's hard to believe it's been so long," I'd hear it from friends, their sympathy unable to bridge the gap Alara's absence created. Bram remains a shadow of his former self. His relationship with the remaining family members strained. Conversations became terse, and silences grew long. "Why won't he just talk to us?" Mom would wonder aloud. His once booming laughter vanished, replaced by hushed sighs and occasional outbursts of frustration. We all felt the distance grow, making the already painful situation even more unbearable. Each day felt like a battlefield. The protagonist tries to move on, creating a life and a family of their own, but the mystery of Alara's disappearance is a constant presence. Even in moments of happiness, like holding a newborn or celebrating small victories, the question of Alara lingered. "I wish she was here," I'd often think, a silent ache in my chest. Building a new life didn't erase the old wounds, it just covered them. The small town they live in whispers of conspiracy theories and rumors about what might have happened. "Did you hear about the new theory?" Neighbors would gossip, their voices filled with intrigue. Some thought Alara had run away, others believed foul play was involved. Each story twisted the knife a little more. Even casual trips to the grocery store felt heavy with the weight of these whispers. Alara's disappearance becomes almost a myth, a dark tale that everyone knows but no one understands. "Remember the girl who vanished?" people would say, sharing bewildered looks. It wasn't just a family tragedy anymore. It had become a cautionary tale told around dinners and gatherings. Each retelling added layers, making her memory both larger than life and tragically unreachable. The family could feel the weight of this unwanted notoriety. Then one day, out of the blue, Bram announces he has something important to share. "Everyone, I need you in the living room, now," he said, his tone uncharacteristically steady. We exchanged puzzled looks, but obeyed. What could he possibly reveal after all these years? We gathered, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and hope. "This better be good," I muttered to myself, unable to shake off the tension. The family gathers anxiously, uncertain what Bram might confess. Mom sat down, wringing her hands, while my heart thudded in my chest. "Dad, what's this about?" I asked, my voice barely masking my impatience. Bram stood there, eyes sweeping over us like he was seeing us for the first time. "There's something I need to get off my chest," he began, the room so silent you could hear a pin drop. He starts by recounting the events leading up to Alara's disappearance. Details they all know, but hear again with a new sense of urgency. "That night, Alara and I had that fight," he said, his voice breaking. "I remember every word, every painful look she gave me." We all listened, each of us gripped by a sense of déjà vu mixed with an unexplainable dread. What new twist awaited us now? Bram's voice shakes as he reveals that during the argument, Alara had threatened to leave the family for good. "I never meant to push her that far," he said, his eyes clouding with regret. We all sat there, stunned into silence. The weight of his words sank in, making the air thick with tension. Alara's threat now sounded more real, more sinister. It wasn't just a burst of anger, it was a desperate plea. He confesses that he followed her that night, leading the family to believe he may have discovered something he hasn't shared. "I couldn't just let her go," Bram admitted, his voice cracking. We exchanged confused glances, our minds racing. Why hadn't he told us earlier? "Did you see something?" I asked, leaning forward. Bram nodded slowly, confirming our worst suspicions. The room filled with an anticipatory dread, everyone bracing for his next revelation. The tension in the room is palpable as everyone awaits the bombshell. Bram took a deep breath, each second stretching like an eternity. "What did you see?" Mom asked cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. Bram swallowed hard, glancing from one face to another. The silence screamed with questions, unspoken yet deafening. Any moment now, the truth would be out, shattering the fragile hope we held on to for the past 8 years. Bram reveals he saw Alara meeting someone that night, an unknown man he had never seen before. She walked up to this man, and they seemed to talk as if they knew each other, Bram explained. Our eyes widened in shock. "Who was he?" I demanded, my heart pounding. Bram shook his head, looking defeated. "I've never seen him before," he confessed. This new piece of information brought a chilling realization. We knew even less about Alara's disappearance. This revelation shocks the family, bringing a new sense of dread and questions about Alara's safety. "What does this mean?" Mom exclaimed, her voice trembling. "Why didn't she tell us about him?" I asked, feeling my stomach churn. Bram looked away, the guilt etched on his face. The floodgates of speculation opened. Was Alara in danger? Did this man have something to do with her disappearance? Our minds raced with dark possibilities, each more haunting than the last. Bram admits he didn't approach them and watched as Alara and the man left together in a car. "I should have stopped them," Bram said, his voice cracking. I could see the regret weighing him down. "Why didn't you?" I demanded, my voice tinged with anger and confusion. "Fear, I guess," Bram whispered, looking down. We all absorbed this new detail, each of us grappling with the implications of his inaction. It felt like a missed chance, a point of no return. The mysterious man remains unidentified, and Bram's guilt over not stopping Alara troubles him deeply. "It's haunted me every single day," Bram admitted, tears welling up. We watched him, feeling a mixture of sympathy and frustration. "We could have found her sooner," I said, unable to hide my disappointment. Bram nodded, wiping his eyes. His guilt was a heavy shackle, anchoring him to that fateful night. It was clear his anguish was genuine, but so was ours. The family is left with more questions than answers, feeling both relieved and horrified. "At least we know she wasn't alone," Mom said, though the solace was minimal. We all sat quietly, absorbing the grim revelations. Hope and dread mingled in our hearts, creating a confusing emotional storm. "What's our next step?" I asked, desperate for a plan. The new details only deepened the mystery, fueling our determination to get to the bottom of Alara's disappearance. They decide to reopen the case, urging the local authorities to pursue this new lead. "We have to go back to the police," Bram insisted, resolute. Mom and I nodded in agreement. We couldn't let this new information go to waste. "Do you think they'll even listen after all these years?" I asked, skeptical but hopeful. "They have to," Mom said firmly. With renewed determination, we decided to take our pleas to the authorities, hopeful this fresh lead would set things in motion. Working with a private investigator, the family uncovers that Alara had been in contact with this mysterious man for months before her disappearance. "These emails are from months before she vanished," the investigator said, showing us the screen. We leaned in, shocked at the revelation. "So, they knew each other well?" Mom asked, her voice filled with disbelief. The emails painted a picture of secret meetings and hidden plans, urging us to dig deeper. The threads of Alara's mysterious relationship began to unravel. They discover emails and messages, revealing plans and secret meetings. "Look at this," the detective said, pointing to a particularly damning email. Alara had been talking to the mysterious man for months. "Why didn't she tell us?" Mom whispered, tears in her eyes. The emails were filled with coded language, secret meetups, and promises of a future that never came. It was like discovering a hidden part of Alara's life. The nature of their relationship is ambiguous, leading to more speculation about who this man might be. "Do you think they were involved romantically?" I asked the detective. "Hard to say," he replied thoughtfully. Some emails hinted at friendship, others suggested something more. "She was always private about her personal life," Mom added, wiping her eyes. Our imaginations ran wild, trying to piece together how Alara knew this mysterious man. While sifting through financial records and phone logs, the investigator finds inconsistencies. "Look at these transactions," he said, highlighting several suspicious entries. Payments made to untraceable accounts, phone calls to unknown numbers. "This doesn't add up," I muttered. Each inconsistency felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into a confusing place. "We need to figure out what she was involved in," the detective said, determination in his voice. The urgency to identify this man intensifies. "We have to find out who he is," Bram urged, his voice shaking. I could see the guilt and desperation in Dad's eyes. Our focus sharpened on tracking down any clue that might reveal the man's identity. "Each detail could be crucial," the detective reminded us. The room buzzed with a new energy, a collective effort to uncover the truth and find Alara. Meanwhile, Bram's guilt suffocates him as he reflects on his decisions that night. "If only I had gone after her," he mumbled to himself. I caught him staring at old photos of Alara, his face etched with regret. "We'll find her, Dad," I said, trying to comfort him. But his eyes were distant, lost in that fateful night. It was clear the weight of his choices burdened him heavily. The investigation points to a nearby city where Alara and the man were last tracked on CCTV footage. The detective showed us grainy images. Alara's familiar figure alongside an unidentified man. This is the last confirmed sighting, he explained. The city's busy streets offered a challenging environment to conduct a search. We're getting closer, I said, feeling a mix of hope and fear. We knew we had to follow this new lead. The family, along with the detective, traveled to this city to trace their steps. The drive was filled with tense silence. I can't believe we're doing this, Mom said, clutching a recent photo of Alara. We'll find something, the detective reassured us. We arrived, our hearts pounding with anticipation. Let's split up and start asking around, Bram suggested. We knew we had to act fast to trace Alara's last known movements. They interview locals and show them pictures, hoping someone remembers seeing Alara or the man. Have you seen this woman? I asked a store owner, showing Alara's photo. No, sorry, he replied, shaking his head sympathetically. Each rejection stung, but we persisted. Anyone look familiar? The detective asked a bystander. She does, but I can't place it, they replied. Every conversation felt like sifting through sand for a single grain of truth. A breakthrough occurs when a hotel clerk recognizes Alara, recalling her checking in with someone who matched the description. Yes, I remember her, the clerk said, pointing at the photo. Our hearts skipped a beat. She seemed on edge, but I didn't think much of it at the time. This small piece of information felt monumental. Finally, a solid lead, I said, feeling a wave of cautious optimism. We had a direction to follow. The clerk remembers unusual behavior, hinting that Alara might have been under distress. She kept looking over her shoulder, like she was scared of something, the clerk described. Did they say anything unusual? The detective asked. She tried to make a phone call, but I couldn't hear what she said, the clerk replied. This new information deepened the mystery. We need to know who she called and why, Bram insisted. This tip leads the detective to focus on the hotel as a key location. We need to dig deeper into their stay here, he said, determination etched on his face. The hotel's archives became their primary target. Start with the check-in logs and security footage, he instructed the staff. The sense of urgency among the family members escalated, knowing they might be close to uncovering crucial details about Alara's last known whereabouts. The team uncovers records at the hotel indicating Alara and the man stayed for several days before disappearing again. Here are their check-in and check-out dates, the clerk said, pushing the logbook towards the detective. The entries were clear and detailed. They didn't raise any suspicions at the time, the clerk added. It became evident that the hotel was a significant chapter in Alara's mysterious journey. New hope sparked as they delved further into the records. Photos from the hotel's CCTV show Alara looking anxious, frequently looking over her shoulder. She seems really nervous, the detective pointed out, zooming in on her face. Look at how she keeps glancing behind her, Mom observed, worry creasing her forehead. Each frame showed Alara's growing unease, almost like she knew she was being watched. We need to understand what was making her so anxious, Dad added, frowning at the images. The detective follows this trail, finding another witness, a bartender who remembers Alara's worried demeanor and her desperate attempt to make a phone call. She looked like she wanted to vanish right then and there, the bartender commented, recalling that night vividly. She asked to use our phone, but seemed reluctant to talk once she got through. This memory from the bartender formed another piece of the puzzle, indicating how troubled Alara was during her stay. They tracked down the number she called, discovering it was to a nearby emergency helpline. She dialed an emergency service, the detective said, eyebrows raised in surprise. What could she have been so desperate to report? Mom wondered aloud. The knowledge that Alara reached out to a helpline hinted at a broader crisis than they had previously imagined. Each new discovery seemed to amplify the urgency to find her and understand her plight. The pieces start to form a puzzling picture, suggesting Alara was trying to escape something dangerous. She was in real trouble, I said, connecting the dots. Emergency calls, anxious behavior, it's all lining up. The family huddled together, each struggling with their own thoughts. We missed so much, Mom whispered, her eyes misty. It's not too late to make things right, Bram said, his voice resolute. The detective nodded, indicating their next steps required precision and focus. As the family digs deeper, they uncover that the mysterious man had a history of manipulating and isolating vulnerable women. He's done this before, the investigator said, showing them a file. The family exchanged horrified glances. "This guy's a predator," I muttered, clenching my fists. Each revelation painted a grimmer picture of Alara's possible fate. More than ever, the urgency to find out more about this man's identity and intentions became the driving force behind their efforts. This revelation shakes the family to their core, realizing Alara might have been a victim of a predatory relationship. "How did we not see the signs?" Mom cried out, her voice breaking. "We were too busy with our own lives," Bram admitted, his guilt overwhelming. The weight of this new information settled heavily on them all, deepening their resolve to discover the truth and bring Alara back, no matter what it took. They knew they couldn't give up now. They grow more desperate to find leads, diving into the man's past and connections. "We need every scrap of information about him," the detective said, his tone firm. Old acquaintances, past addresses, and any connection he might have had were scrutinized. "He has to have left a trail somewhere," Bram insisted. The family's determination turned into a relentless pursuit, each discovery acting like a breadcrumb leading them closer to uncovering the mystery of Alara's disappearance. The private investigator follows up on several promising leads, identifying potential witnesses who knew the man. "I've got a list of people who interacted with him," the detective said, laying out the names. "Let's start with these." The focus sharpened, every call and visit made with a renewed sense of purpose. "We're getting closer. I can feel it," Bram said. The family shared his sentiment, each of them hopeful that these new witnesses could provide the breakthrough they desperately sought. Each new piece of information reveals an increasingly sinister plot, making the family fear for Alara's safety even more. "This goes deeper than we thought," Bram said, his voice barely above a whisper. The pieces of the puzzle painted a grim picture of manipulation and deceit. "We need to act fast," the detective urged. Every detail unearthed felt like peeling back a layer of a dark, terrifying story, emphasizing the urgency of their mission. Just when the investigation seems to stall, a breakthrough emerges. "You're not going to believe this," the investigator announced, holding up a document. "What is it?" I asked, leaning in. "I found an old storage unit rented by our mysterious man," he explained. This revelation infused new energy into the team. "We need to check it out immediately," Bram said, determination flaring in his eyes. The sense of hope, mingled with dread, swept through the room. The detective uncovers an old storage unit rented by the mysterious man. "We're heading there now," he said, grabbing his keys. The family exchanged nervous glances, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The drive felt both eternal and instantaneous, everyone silent but alert. As they arrived, the detective carefully opened the unit, revealing its contents. "This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for," Bram whispered, almost afraid to hope. They stepped inside, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Inside, they find belongings clearly linked to Alara, including personal items and photographs. "Look at this," Mom said, picking up an old hairbrush that unmistakably belonged to Alara. The photos showed her alongside the mysterious man, smiling, but with a hint of unease in her eyes. "She was here," I said, my voice cracking. The discovery filled the room with a mixture of emotions, hope that they were closer to finding her, and fear of what they might uncover next. The discovery fills the family with a mix of hope and dread, confirming Alara was deeply entangled with the man. "How did we miss this?" Bram muttered, his voice filled with regret. Each item they found seemed to tell a story, pieces of Alara's life they never knew existed. "This is a lot to process," Mom said, wiping away tears. But amid the overwhelming emotions, a collective resolve emerged. They had to see this journey to its end, no matter the cost. Among the items is a note written by Alara, a hint that she tried to leave a message for the family. "Look at this," the detective said, holding up a worn piece of paper. Alara's familiar handwriting filled the page. "What does it say?" I asked, my heart racing. The note was cryptic, filled with urgency and coded language. "She was trying to tell us something important," Bram said, his eyes narrowing. The note became their next critical clue. The contents of the note are cryptic, but it alludes to a final, desperate move by Alara. "She mentions a place she might go," the detective said, scanning the note, "but it's not clear where." Every line hinted at fear and urgency, painting a stark picture of Alara's state of mind. "We have to decipher this," Bram insisted. The note's vague directions became their new focus, a puzzle they had to solve to follow Alara's trail. The detective deciphers the note, leading them to an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of the city. "I think I've got it," he said, tracing a route on the map. The location seemed eerily isolated, hidden from prying eyes. "We need to check it out immediately," Bram declared. The drive to the farmhouse filled the family with anticipation and anxiety. "This has to be it," I whispered to myself, clinging to the hope that they were finally getting close. Here, they make the most shocking discovery of all. Evidence suggesting Alara had been held against her will, but managed to escape. "Look at these marks," the detective pointed out, showing signs of restraint. "She was here," Bram said, his voice trembling. Broken furniture and hastily discarded items told a desperate story. "She fought to get away," I added, feeling a surge of pride and sorrow. Each clue at the farmhouse revealed a horrifying chapter of Alara's ordeal. They find more personal items and journal entries from Alara, revealing the truth. "She wrote about everything," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. The journal entries detailed her captivity, her fear, and her desperate plans to escape. "This man has a lot to answer for," Bram growled, anger and determination lighting up his eyes. Finding Alara's words brought them closer to her, fueling their resolve to uncover the whole truth and finally bring her home. Bram's bombshell confession dovetails with this discovery. He knew the man was a distant relative engaged in illegal activities. "What are you saying, Dad?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I didn't want you to know," Bram admitted, unable to meet our eyes. We exchanged bewildered looks. The weight of his words hung heavy in the room, each of us grappling to understand the full implications of his shocking revelation. Bram had been paying the man to leave Alara and the family alone, but it went horribly wrong, leading to Alara's captivity. "I only wanted to protect her," Bram said, his voice cracking. "But he manipulated the situation," Mom interjected, realization dawning on her. Bram nodded, tears streaming down his face. The full scope of the man's treachery and Bram's desperation to shield the family became painfully clear to everyone present. The detective pieces together the timeline, realizing that Alara's attempts to escape must have been desperate and risky. "She planned every move," he said, pointing to her journal entries. "But this man was always a step ahead." Bram stared at the notes, visibly shaken. "She must have been so scared," Mom murmured, her eyes filling with fresh tears. The reality of Alara's harrowing ordeal embedded itself deeply in our minds, each detail more gut-wrenching than the last. The family grapples with the weight of Bram's actions and their devastating consequences. "We all made mistakes," Mom said softly, trying to comfort Bram. But he shook his head. "This is mine to bear," he insisted. The room seemed to close in on us, the gravity of the situation pressing down harder than ever. The lines between blame and forgiveness blurred, leaving us all emotionally drained. "We can't change the past," I whispered, though even I wasn't sure I believed it. They find themselves both relieved to understand the truth and heartbroken by the events that transpired. "At least we finally know," I told Mom, squeezing her hand. She nodded, her face a mixture of sorrow and relief. The truth held a brutal clarity, stripping away years of doubt and guilt. "But at what cost?" Bram asked, his voice hollow. Each of us felt the weight of that question, knowing that the truth had only deepened our collective wound. The confession and the discoveries bring the family a mix of closure and heartbreak, forever changing their lives. "We can start to heal now," Mom said, attempting to find a positive in the bleak situation. Bram looked at us, his eyes filled with regret and love. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Our family now faced the daunting task of moving forward, each step haunted by the memories and the truth that had finally surfaced. As they process the confession, the family resolves to honor Alara's memory by sharing her story to prevent similar tragedies. "We need to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else," I said, my voice firm. Mom nodded in agreement. "We'll share her story, every painful detail if we have to," she added. The resolve to turn their pain into a call for awareness gave the family a renewed purpose. It became their mission to ensure Alara's suffering wasn't in vain. The detective ensures all evidence is documented, and the authorities finally close the case on Alara's disappearance. "We have everything we need," the detective said, looking satisfied yet somber. Bram sighed, visibly relieved. "It's over," he said softly. The sense of finality was bittersweet. We had our answers, but they came at a tremendous emotional cost. The chapter of Alara's disappearance closed, but the impact on our lives would be enduring. The family, although shattered by the discovery, find solace in knowing what happened to Alara. She deserved to be found, Mom said, clutching Alara's picture. Bram nodded, his eyes wet with unshed tears. The ache in our hearts remained, but the clarity brought a measure of peace. We knew the path forward would be steep and fraught with pain, but understanding the full story gave us a foundation from which to rebuild. The story concludes with the family united in their grief, determined to move forward and cherish the memories of their lost sister. Together we'll get through this, I said, looking around at my family. Each nod, each tear-soaked face was a symbol of our collective strength. In our shared sorrow, we found new bonds and a deeper resolve. Alara's memory would live on in our hearts, guiding us as we navigated the path ahead.